Hello, I'm Chris, and I'm here to tell you that Sega's arcade racing classic OutRun 2006 Coast to Coast is literally the Dark Souls of dating simulators. Yeah, stay tuned. OutRun 2006 is the long-awaited sequel to the original, a classic staple of Japanese arcades that originally launched in September 1986. Shortly thereafter, it made its way overseas, becoming a celebrated and incredibly influential video game title, topping arcade charts in Japan, the United States, and the United Kingdom throughout 1987 onwards. Considering this original game's critical and commercial success, how could a sequel possibly follow up? OutRun was revolutionary for its time, a time when video games offered the player predominantly two directions, left and right. Or perhaps four, if they were feeling particularly saucy, such as Dragon Quest, Ultima, and Final Fantasy. But then OutRun came along, offering the player a brand new, earth-shattering direction forwards. Whoa! This was before the Super Nintendo system normalized this concept with Mode 7, meaning that the original OutRun was really quite ahead of its time. Over the course of this review, I'll be talking about the OutRun series whilst focusing predominantly on OutRun 2006 Coast to Coast because, well, it's my favourite. Of course, as the sophisticated viewer that you are, you may find yourself a very busy person, without the time to listen to me prattle on about a game that I would call the pinnacle of arcade racing. In that case, as always, you can mosey on down to the video description and go straight to the bottom line for my final thoughts. For everyone else, let's dive in. So, what is OutRun? OutRun is a series of games in which the player is tasked with taking a Ferrari of their choice from one end of the stage to the other, all the while racing a timer and swerving and weaving betwixt the general traffic which litters the road. Upon reaching the end of a stage, the path branches. Going left is the easy route, going right is the harder. There are 15 stages in total, but through this selection process, you will only ever play 5 per run. By OutRun 2 in 2006, the Japanese joy of drifting has firmly cemented itself into the series and is now an iconic feature. It is from this arcade game which its console counterpart, OutRun 2006, clearly builds from. 2 came with 7 cars, 2006 provides 15. 2 came with 15 stages, 2006 doubled it with 30. What the original OutRun and the direct sequel OutRun 2 have in common is that they both feature routes that are heavily inspired by European locations. Original OutRun designer Yu Suzuki scouted Europe for 2 weeks, and many of the tracks in-game, particularly OutRun 2, share clear inspiration from a variety of different European nations such as Italy, France, and the Netherlands. Fun fact: Yu Suzuki did not scout out these locations by driving a Ferrari as you do in-game. Instead, he drove a BMW. Now, I don't know about you, but I really can't imagine a parallel universe in which OutRun succeeds by offering the player a selection of BMWs as opposed to its famous lineup of Ferraris. As a quick aside, I will just say that between OutRun 2 and OutRun 2006, Sega released an updated arcade machine for OutRun 2 called OutRun 2 SP, which features a lot of the content which wound up making it into OutRun 2006. The additional tracks added have a much more American flavour, and it is from here that the title Coast to Coast originates. For this review, I have played a heck of a lot of the arcade machines, as well as the PlayStation 2 and PC versions of the game. I had a very good time doing so. As I'm sure you can imagine, the gameplay is the pinnacle of the whole OutRun 2006 Coast to Coast experience. There are 15 unique cars, each with 2 classes, totaling up to 30 distinct Ferraris to play with throughout your time with OutRun 2006. This is a clear improvement over the original game, which only had the one. They all handle differently, depending on how their stats are distributed. As is the case with many racing games, the easier vehicles favour acceleration and handling, whereas the harder ones have higher top speeds. Despite all being the same brand of vehicle, Ferrari evidently has a long, diverse history of manufacturing, as each car looks suitably different from the others, providing a sense of variety within the selection of vehicles. Each body also has several different colours that you can apply. Before I go into the numerous ways to play OutRun 2006, I'll talk quickly about the moment-to-moment gameplay, as it's the true bread and butter of the experience. I said earlier that OutRun 2006 is the pinnacle of arcade racing, and I stand firmly by that statement. Despite each car handling differently, they all still do so excellently. Whether you're roaring down the transitional highways at a top speed of 250 miles per hour, or throwing yourself around a tight corner in a desperate last-minute drift, you'll never feel like you're not in total control of your vehicle. The controls are tight, responsive, and incredibly satisfying. The sense of speed is tremendously exciting, and if you're fortunate enough to be able to play OutRun with a racing wheel, well then it's a truly unmatched experience. OutRun 2006 offers several different modes of play, from the classic OutRun 2 SP mode to a more structured campaign. It was this campaign that I beat recently. I had a mostly good time doing so. The campaign is divided into several difficulties, ranging from novice to the much more challenging OutRun difficulty mode. I'll be honest, it does get very challenging, and I had to put the controller down and walk away on more than one occasion. However, the campaign introduces a lot of variety, mixing up which courses you'll be driving through from all 30 tracks available, and mixes and matches from OutRun 2 and SP's track selection freely, keeping things fresh. There are dozens upon dozens of challenges here, and it takes quite a while to complete them, not to mention having to save up for better cars to drive. You'll certainly need them for the later stages. After beating the 4 difficulty levels in the campaign, you'd think you'd be done, right? Nope. This brings us to the girlfriend portion of the campaign, and back to the very beginning of this review. Upon selecting the first girl to join you on your road trip and beginning the first stage, those relationship terminating, horrifying words erupt from her eerily gleeful self. She says,
"Hit the cars!"
That's right. At which point you're probably thinking, oh no. Her Tinder profile said she liked to travel. She never mentioned wanting to leave devastation in her wake. She said she loved to laugh. She never mentioned wanting to cackle maniacally at the bodies piled up in the street from my dangerous and homicidal driving. Excuse me, waiter, check please. This, I'm sure, is something that we can all relate to on one level or another. Returning viewers to this channel, or in fact just people who know things, may recall that Lord Alfred Tennyson once wrote that it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Now, I'm no historian, but I'm fairly sure that 19th century English poet Lord Alfred Tennyson did not play 21st century Japanese arcade racer OutRun 2006 Coast to Coast, else I'm certain that after being exposed to these eligible bachelorettes, he would have walked that statement back, or indeed driven it back in the fastest Ferrari available. Yes, for the girlfriend mode, the player must drive through the complete selection of stages and unlock wildly outlandish requests from your fair maiden to complete along the way. These range from smashing traffic off the road to dribbling giant beach balls and running down ghosts, because clearly the people of the afterlife need to be tormented too. It is here where you realise that as far as dating simulators go, OutRun 2006 Coast to Coast is literally the Dark Souls of finding a nice girl whom you'd feel comfortable introducing to your parents. It's also worth pointing out that if you run out of time between checkpoints and game over early, she will literally start physically assaulting you. I choose to believe that she's some kind of criminal, desperately trying to flee the scene, and you're her bumbling yet loyal wheelman. Visually, OutRun 2006 is quite the treat. It borrows heavily from its arcade counterpart OutRun 2 to the point where the console version could easily just be considered a port with updated content. This is not a bad thing, as the arcade machine looks fantastic too. It embraces the style of the wacky arcade racer and features colourful graphics and a dynamic, wide variety of locations. Graphically, it hasn't aged too brilliantly on the PlayStation 2, limited as it is to its 480p resolution, but playing it on the PC at a full 1080p allows this diamond to truly shine. One thing I've been rather excited to talk about is the audio, or more specifically, the soundtrack. But before this, I will quickly address the sound effects. They are perfectly functional and very good. The whoosh as you speed past traffic is tangible. The crash as you slam your vehicle into the aforementioned traffic at the behest of your megalomaniacal travelling companion masquerading as your girlfriend is truly marvellous, as is the sound of your roaring engine. Now let's talk about the music. I love it. Upon starting a round of OutRun 2006 Coast to Coast, you're given a selection of tracks with which to jam out to whilst you're playing. I guess I've always been fairly basic in that I'm rather fond of Splashwave, although my girlfriend has also added Magical Sound Shower to her personal driving playlist, which is also an inspired choice. There are several different tunes available, and another wonderful feature OutRun 2006 adds is the ability to purchase and unlock remixes or the original 80s composition of said tracks using in-game currency. I don't know about you, but playing the game enough to grind up the number of OutRun miles I need to play some classic arcade 80s bangers is plenty of an incentive for me. Additionally, there are several fantastic Eurobeat remixes available as well. Indeed, the whole vibe of this series is so strong that there's a very clear reason why the words outrun and synthwave are so interchangeable. If you're not too familiar with the outrun aesthetic or the synthwave music scene, by all means please do look it up. It is just this incredible nostalgic vibe for long summer evenings with a particular focus on the 80s sense of style and fashion. There really is nothing else quite like it. OutRun 2006 Coast to Coast is the culmination of everything that is fun about arcade racing, and to this day is still very much the best that the genre has to offer. I truly hope that one day we'll see a third proper installment of the series. Considering how long the releases were between the original OutRun and its sequels, I don't think it's too much of a stretch at all. Every version of the game is fantastic, and if anyone were to set up their own arcade, they would be doing both themselves and their patrons a disservice by not providing at least one OutRun machine. Whilst it unfortunately seems like the contemporary AAA racing scene has pivoted away from the over-the-top silliness that is OutRun, thankfully its spirit certainly lives on in the form of some spectacular indie offerings, some of which I will show here and thoroughly recommend that you check out. These games make the long wait for any kind of OutRun news just a little bit more bearable. In the meantime, all I ask of you whilst we do wait is that you join me next time, when I'll be talking about a different game. I'll be talking about the first in a trilogy of British role-playing games in which the player's persona has a predisposition towards pursuing poultry.